What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 309 of the Atlantic Files. This week, we're going over the Sixers versus Knicks series so far, which is at 2-1 Knicks. The Celtics being tied 1-1 with the Miami Heat, and a check-in on the rest of the playoffs. So without further ado, let's hit the intro real quick.
Welcome to the Atlantic Files, where humor and vibes collide. Nets and Sixers, the king of the court. Jokes that hit you one more. Atlantic Division, we own the scene. Comedy, food talk, every routine. Mike Bash, Clausen, Fischbein on the mic, making you laugh every episode right. Game is strong, court to kitchen. We're never wrong. You know what time it is. It's time for the Atlantic Files.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Atlantic Files, the number one podcast on the number one division in the NBA, brought to you by the Underdog Sports Podcast Network. As always, joined by your host, myself, Alex Fischbein. I got a solo one here for you guys, and today we are going to go over some of the playoff series here. We're definitely going to get into the Sixers versus the Knicks, and the Celtics versus the Heat. And then we'll kind of touch on some of the other series as well. And we're also going to take a look at BovadaSportsbook.com's betting odds to go over what, some teams might be looking like for the rest of the series or their next game and so on and so forth. So without further ado, let's get into, we got to get into Sixers Knicks. I mean, that's the big thing here. And as you can see from my little tagline down here, Nova isn't a Philly school, because I think I speak for most of Philly right now when a lot of people were a little upset that that the Villanova account was hyping up their former players who play for the Knicks, because if you claim to be a Philly school, if you claim to be from Philly, you should know that you can wait to hype your team up. Say the Sixers lose the series, hype them up then. Say the Sixers move on, but your alumni did a great job, hype them up then. That's essentially what Philly fans are mainly asking about, because they don't want you hyping up the opposing team in the middle of a series, especially one as physical and as heated as this one has been. Now, I want to say game one was it was a solid game. It was a good game, and I'm going to, for those watching on YouTube, I'm going to bring up some of the highlights here from game one while I talk it through. It was a solid game. You kind of knew from day one, I should say minute one, that the Sixers didn't look like they were going to win this first game. There wasn't much going on while I was watching this game that gave me a lot of confidence that the Sixers were going to win. And so as the game kept progressing and progressing, even though Jalen Brunson wasn't doing, normal Jalen Brunson things at this point, he at least, was able to push the team a little further. He was able to really bring attention from the defense and get some other guys open. And I know as I'm saying this, the people watching the highlights are like, what do you mean? The Sixers were up 14-7 at one point. Like, I get all that. And, Maxey hits his three. They go up 17-7, 18-7. But again, after watching the Sixers so much, you just get the idea that it wasn't going to be that good of a win. Or even not that good of a win, just not a win in general. So, yeah, I mean, there was some good moments here and there. There were some good defensive moments. I mean, Kyle Lowry, I really liked what he brought in, not only just game one, but in this series so far. Kyle Lowry, actually, I have some series stats here. Kyle Lowry is actually the third leading scorer for the Sixers through 3 games right now. He has a total of 35 points through 3 games, and the next highest person after him is Kelly Oubre with 29. Obviously, Embiid and Maxey are far and away the top guys in this series. not only for the Sixers, but just for both teams in general. I mean, Embiid's averaging 37 a game. Maxi's are averaging 31 a game. On the Knicks side of things, the highest man there is Brunson at 28, and then you have Josh Hart at 21. The big thing about the Knicks, and it was evident by game one, it was evident by game two, is it's really the team aspect of this Tibbs led not only offense but defense. You got big contributions from Josh Hart, big contributions from Hartenstein. There has been a lot of contributions on the defensive end from Mitchell Robinson. Bojan Bogdanovic has been chipping in here and there. DiVincenzo actually hasn't been getting like too hot just yet, but has the ability to go off at any point. Miles McBride giving them huge minutes off the bench and some big points. OG Anunoby has been very solid, to say the least. So it's a very well-rounded effort from the Knicks, which is really what has been keeping them in the lead in this series, and almost pushed them to really try and take that first home game in game three before the Sixers went nuclear in that third quarter. Josh Hart, I have to say, is by far the Knicks MVP. I mean, currently averaging 21 points, 11.3 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 1.3 steals, and almost a block per game right now, while shooting 45% from the floor and 52% from three. And I just want to say that's obviously big, because shooting 52% from three when you're a 31% shooter from this season and a 34% career shooter, I mean, that's just honestly pretty unheard of. And in this game one, those watching saw that highlight right there when Embiid threw it off the glass, caught the dunk, and then tweaked his knee again. That was a big turning moment in that first game, because while the Sixers were losing a little momentum, albeit the dunk and everything created a big play for them, and I could see some momentum starting to mount after that. But then once he goes down and, really in pain, and we get that video of him blinking weird and everything that we then found out was Bell's palsy, it really startled a lot of people, including everybody from the team. And I just want to say right now, according to Bovada, the Sixers are still the underdog in this series. The Knicks are at a minus 240 to win the series, while the Sixers are at a plus 200. I mean, to be fair, it is very close to even. It's not, like nobody's heavily favored, such as like the Nuggets, who are at plus 2,000, right? Or sorry, minus 20,000, with the Lakers at plus 2,000 to win that series. So it's honestly been a great series so far. Very back and forth, a lot of momentum shifts, a lot of lead changes, a lot of physicality, and there's a big time amount of banging down low in the paint. The big men are just really going at it. And it's just a great type of old school feel to this series. And it's funny because a lot of people talk about how they wanted, the old school the play. They wanted the old school defense and things like that. However, you get these type of games now, especially in the playoffs, and I see a lot of people complaining about the amount of physicality and the amount of calls that aren't happening. My thing in general, and don't get me wrong, I've done my fair share of complaining about calls. However, I'm also not the one asking for, brawls and fights in basketball anymore. But all I want to see out of the refs is calling it even both ways. If you're going to call one thing on one side for, let's just, for example, say the Knicks, then call the same thing on the other side for the Sixers. That is the baseline of what I have ever wanted in refs in a basketball game or series. And so if you're not giving that same type of call to both sides, then it's stupid. Like just flat out stupid. I hate that. And I don't care if it's for my team, against my team. I hate it either way. So anyone who comes to me and says, "Oh, well, you were quiet when the Sixers weren't getting those calls or were getting those calls," it's like I feel this way no matter who the team is. Do I want the Sixers to win? And will I accept a win if that happens? Sure. But at the same time, I still don't think it's as, up to snuff if the both teams aren't getting the same respect in terms of calls. That's first and foremost. And I just want to bring up Brunson here, as you can see on the bottom line there, because Brunson, I will say, the emergence of Josh Hart in this series, the big moments from Hartenstein, the big moments from McBride, and all of that have been, I mean, don't get me wrong, very big moments and very well, highlighted as they should be. But I also think that these moments have been kind of in Brunson's favor, overshadowing how bad he actually has been in this series. Now, he finally had a good game in game 3, and it obviously took a while, took all the way to game 3. And his averages don't look bad. Like, he's averaging 28 points, 5.7 rebounds, 8.7 assists. Not much on the defensive side at all. And then you got 10 turnovers in the 3 games, which again, about around 3 turnovers a game as your number one star player isn't, that's not really anything to write home about. It's nothing crazy. But shooting 35.4% from the floor. If last night's game 3 didn't happen, it would be a lot worse. 26.3% from 3. He's shooting a total of 29 for 82 from the floor and 5 for 19 from 3. But he is getting 22. He's hit 22 of 27 free throw attempts. So he's gotten to the line a good bit. Probably could get there a bit more. I think the refs do have, shafted him here and there on some of the calls he could/should have gotten. But the big thing that I think is honestly the most interesting is that Nick Nurse has not even decided to double team, triple team, whatever Jalen Brunson, whereas I feel as though a lot of coaches probably would. He has just taken his bigger wings and has said, look, deny the ball, pick him up full court, make his life hell. And for the most part, they have been doing that. Kelly Oubre, who is not known for his defense, has been hounding it. Tobias Harris, again, not known for his defense, has been hounding him. Nick Batum, probably in his prime, probably the better defender of the 3, but hounding him. They have all done great jobs, respectively, on Jalen Brunson and making his life hell, especially in the first 2 games at home. I was pretty surprised that Jalen Brunson just was not that good at home, really at all. If we go back and look at the game 1 stats, Brunson was tied for the team lead in points with Josh Hart. However, Josh Hart shot 4 of 8 from 3 and 5 of 12 overall. Brunson took 26 shots just to get 22 points. He shot 8 for 26 and only hit 1 of his 6 3-point attempts. In that time, he was a -3 on the court, which, I mean, the starters honestly were all in the negatives for the Knicks. The positives were Mitchell Robinson at a +20, Miles McBride at a +37, and Bojan Bogdanovic at a +27. But if we take a look at the points, I mean, Hart had 22, OG had 11 on 50% shooting. McBride had 21 points on 5 of 7 from 3 and 7 of 12 from the floor. And Bojan had 3 threes himself and got up to 13 points. So there was a lot of contributions all over the court for the Knicks, which covered up the fact that Brunson really did not play well at all. And Brunson's defense also has been pretty horrid. I mean, game 1, an offensive rating of 101 and a defensive rating of 124 is really bad, especially if that's your number 1 guy. And then if we take it to game 2, which I know everybody has talked about, the last 2-minute report came out about it, and yeah, obviously there was plenty of missed calls on mainly missed calls in favor of the Knicks. And, you can argue till the cows come home of what went first and what came second. But the fact of the matter is, there was a lot of issues in there that that went against the Sixers. And they talked about filing a grievance. I'm glad they didn't actually file a grievance, because honestly, that shit's just embarrassing. Like, you don't need to file a grievance for this. It's stupid. Just give it. You lost the game, and we move on. I don't agree with the whole grievance part. But anyway, we get to game two. Again here, Jalen Brunson, he got up to 24 points, but he took 29 shots just to get 24 points. He was 8 for 29, another 1 for 6 from 3. But he contributed, he chipped in a little, 6 assists, 8 rebounds. Like, he chipped in a little there. He was positive in this game. He was a +3. It was on the lower side of the starters. Hart was also +3, OG +1, Hartenstein +1. Dante DiVincenzo was the big one there at +11 with 19 points as well. McBride didn't have the type of shooting night he had in game one, but he did enough to not only stay on the floor, but contribute to the team. Mitchell Robinson didn't even attempt a shot at all, but his defensive presence was felt for sure. And, making a free throw towards the end of the game was big as well. Bojan Bogdanovic, he hit a couple threes, kind of did what you asked of him. So I say all this to say, in this one, Brunson's offensive rating, 88. Defensive rating, 112, which was worse than only OG in that game, with a box plus minus of -5.7. Not great. His value over replacement player was -2.9 in that game. To give you a comparison, Josh Hart's was 9.7. And that's prorated to 82 games from Basketball Reference's box scores there. So now we take a look at game three. And like I said, game three was different. Brunson finally came to really play on offense there. 13 of 27. He had 39 points, 13 assists, and only 4 turnovers. But in this one, he was a big minus in the plus minus department, thanks to that big third quarter from the Sixers. But in his 45 minutes, which was the most out of anybody on the team, he was a -14. He got shot 10 for 12 from the line, 3 for 7 from 3, and 13 for 27 from the floor. And he really got it going. But outside of Josh Hart, you had OG Anunoby at 17, which not bad at all. He shot 7 of 11. Hartenstein at 14, shot 7 of 12. But DiVincenzo didn't have the same type of shooting night. McBride didn't. Bogdanovic didn't. They weren't hitting all the shots they've been hitting all series. And their defense especially was just blown up in that third quarter when the Sixers just got absolutely hot. In that third quarter, the Sixers outscored the Knicks 43-27. So we will move over to the Sixers side of things here. Joel Embiid scored his 50. Obviously, I think it's a tainted 50. It was, don't get me wrong, scoring 50 at any point is incredibly impressive. But I, for one, do not agree with the play from Embiid that he started to grab Mitchell Robinson like around the knees and the legs and the ankles and kind of take him down when he was sitting on the floor. I mean, Embiid's post-game interview, he talked about, being in a precarious situation where he feels like he always gets hurt in that situation. So he was quote unquote protecting himself. Do I agree with that? I mean, it's pretty shady to say the least. So, like I said, it's pretty marred by that play. That play was pretty ridiculous. A lot of people show the one with him running and doing kind of the swing move on Hartenstein. Embiid does that play a lot. I mean, it didn't even look like he really hit Hartenstein in the balls because Hartenstein got right back up after like covering up for a second. I just don't see to actually try to kick him while running and doing a swing move. That's just way too much. If he actually tried to like kick while he was doing that, his knee probably would have exploded, to be honest with you, with how bad his knee is. But his pick at the very end of the game that kind of took OG Anunoby out. Again, many big men do that. I didn't find that one dirty at all either. I've been a victim of that, running into a brick wall screen like that where a guy just kind of stays back and sticks his butt out and catches you. I don't think that's a dirty play. That is a that play has happened in basketball many times, especially for all those people out there that want 90s defense and everything. That happened all the time then. So I don't find that as a dirty play. But the one with Mitchell Robinson where he pulls him down as he's laying on the floor, absolutely, that is a brain dead move. And that was something where it looked like Embiid had his feelings hurt, and there's no call or sorry, there's no reason for that. And I do agree with people. If this was a regular season game, he probably would have gotten tossed in that play. Obviously, being the playoffs, being the MVP, all that kind of stuff, probably granted him some leeway. So, and for all the people saying like, "Oh, Draymond would have gotten thrown out," yes, because Draymond has a very well recorded history of being the dirtiest player in the entire league. Like, it's not a contest. He is the dirtiest player in the entire league. It's very well written out, recorded, everything. So moving on from that though, getting 50, Embiid got to the line in this game. Again, I talked about, the whole the refs need to call it both ways. I still agree with that. I still think they need to call it both ways. He got 21 free throws, but again, some of these were at the end of the game. I would say like 4 to 6 of them were at the end of the game where they were just kind of playing keep away, and he got the ball, and he got some foul shots out of those. And so it is what it is. Brunson got to the line 12 times. So I don't know where I've seen some people saying that the Knicks got to the line only 12 times in the entire game. So, but that was Brunson himself. But it was 19 attempts to the Sixers' 33 attempts. So obviously they got mainly a lot of the calls. Now, the big thing is, and it's not a secret in the NBA, home teams are going to get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to calls. It just happens every time. Do I agree with that? Not necessarily, but it's never been a big secret in the NBA, and it continues here as we have seen plenty of. So I don't see the Sixers getting all of the same free throws again in game 4. However, they probably will get the benefit of the doubt again, just like the Knicks did in games 1 and 2. And so it's going to be a matter of who can not allow that to slow their momentum, who can still be able to build offense and be able to at least shake the other team a bit and not allow them to score as much as they have been. This game is going to continue to get physical. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody retaliates against Joel Embiid. I think the refs, to be honest with you, are going to have to come out pretty early on and say, look, no bullshit. The moment anyone tries to fight or anyone tries to retaliate about anything, we are going to step in. I think they have to make that kind of call right away. I think they have to really make sure people understand, hey, we're not settling for this. So don't pull that shit now. Because if you make that known right away, then you should call it that way from there on out. But outside of that, I mean, I think the game 4 should be interesting. It's going to be, I think, the most physical game of all the games. So I think that's going to be could be a very fun one, but also a very stressful one to watch at the same time. So I'm excited. I think the Sixers finally showed some fight. They finally showed some fight back. And, they get a good boost of confidence in that third quarter, a good boost of confidence from Joel Embiid, not shying away and really figuring out, how to really get his points in the playoffs. In this first series, I mean, this has probably been his best playoff series maybe in his career, to be honest, in terms of just straight up points and impact, because we've seen him in plenty of playoff series just turnover after turnover and really just making bonehead plays where he just gets rushed and flustered and throws the ball away. In 3 games, he has 7 turnovers. There were plenty of playoff games where he had 7 turnovers in just one game. So there is a lot of growth in, I'm not going to say his maturity levels, because from some of the plays he made, we obviously can see his maturity levels probably aren't, all the way up there just yet. But his IQ, his passing ability for sure has improved. And we're seeing it in the tune of 37 points a game, almost 9 rebounds, 5.3 assists a game, while shooting 47.1 from the floor, and one of his best 3-point shooting games, probably also of his career, not just his playoff career, last night. And that putting him up to 37.5% from 3. So there's a lot of good things coming out of it, a lot of encouraging things in general. And if I look at this right now for game 4, the Sixers right now on Bovada are actually 4.5-point favorites. They're also at minus 185 here for money line. So not bad. I mean, the over under is only at 207, which is not one of the higher ones. I think it's actually like it's the third lowest scoring over under to only Cleveland, Orlando, and Boston, Miami. So yeah. With that being said, let's take it over to the Boston Celtics. I have to admit, I was on here with Dennis last week, and I said how the Heat were going to win this series, kind of tongue in cheek, kind of wanting to believe it, kind of, putting a prediction out there that might be the one that people aren't thinking of. But I didn't think Miami was going to win game 1 or 2, especially without Jimmy Butler. I thought they were, 2 in Boston, then Miami wins 2 at home. And then you get to game 5 and you start to see, is Butler coming back? And then maybe, Boston wins their game 5, and then Butler comes back for the last 2 games and somehow pushes them, to an improbable series win. That was kind of my thought process there. So this start to the series is interesting, to say the least. I mean, Miami's effective field goal percentage in this series is 59.3, which is better than Boston's 57.4. So they're both pretty high up there in that regard. I mean, Boston, in Basketball References 4 factors, has the better numbers in turnover percentage, offensive rebound percentage, and then free throws per field goal attempt. They are leading in all 3 of those 4 categories. And I mean, they have a nice, well-rounded attack, obviously, from Tatum, Brown, White, Porzingis, Horford, Holiday. Holiday hasn't really done much in terms of scoring. His shooting percentages have not been great so far. So still kind of waiting to see how he kind of pans out for the rest of this. But Tatum, I mean, 44.7% from the floor. His 3-point shooting has been pretty awful, but that I'm sure will be, turning around at some point soon. Jalen Brown has been shooting very well, 54% from the floor, 50% from 3. So there's a lot of good things that we're seeing from the 2 stars, at least, even though some of the percentages, like Jalen Brown's free throw percentage and then Jason Tatum's 3-point percentage, that need to be improved. But in this series, the Celtics came in pretty heavy favorites, which obviously they were the only team in the East to win 60 games. They won the East by 14 games, I believe. So they're going to be heavy favorites literally against anybody. And as of right now, according to Bovada, the Celtics are still heavy favorites. They're minus 2,200 to win the series, while Miami is at plus 1,000 right now. So the favorite, everything's still leaning their way. In the next game, which is in Miami, Boston's actually a 9-point favorite. So there's not many teams here that are going to be that big of a favorite away from home. And we still don't know when we're going to see Butler. The original report was still going to be a few weeks until we see him back on the court. Could he make some heroic comeback before then? maybe, but as for the Heat fans out there, I wouldn't count on it. It's not, something that is very likely or close to likely. So, with that being said, I'm not worried about the Celtics. Obviously, a lot of people love seeing this happen to the Celtics because they've won enough and had this stacked team and all this kind of stuff all season. And everyone all year has been pretty much saying it's a foregone conclusion that the Celtics and the Nuggets are going to be back in the finals again, and it's going to be a rematch and so on and so forth. So, to all you Celtics fans out there, it's not always personal. Sometimes people just don't want to see the same team winning all the time. In terms of the Atlantic Division, yeah, it's personal. So there's that at least. Um, let's just kind of check in with the rest of the playoffs here. So we have the Orlando Magic finally grabbed a game in their series. It is now 2-1 Cleveland. Orlando beat the brakes off of Cleveland in that game, in that game 3. And I mean, it's pretty insane that Orlando goes from scoring 83 in game 1, 86 in game 2, to all of a sudden 121 in game 3. Now, Cleveland, I'm getting a little worried for them because their offense really hasn't been all that it's cracked up to be. Game 1, they didn't even reach 100. They only had 97. Granted, still won by 14. Fine. Game 2, they go down to 96. Still win by 10. Whatever. Jared Allen, 20 rebounds. Donovan Mitchell, 23 points in game 2, 30 points in game 1. Then we get to game 3, and they only put up 83 points. And not just that, but Garland shot 2 for 10. He finished with 5 points overall. Donovan Mitchell finished with 13 points, which is he's only had 5 games with fewer than 13 points in his entire playoff career, which consists of around 46 or 47 games. Not great. And in this, I mean, Mitchell played 26 minutes, Allen 24, Strus 24, Mobley 22. Garland played more than all of them and still couldn't even get more points than Mitchell, Allen, or Mobley. LeVert and Allen were actually the two tied for the highest amount with 15 points apiece, which goes to say a lot if Karis LeVert and Jared Allen are leading the entire team in points. And obviously, it was a blowout because there were, 7 bench players that got into this game. If that's happening in the playoffs, then yeah, that's a bad game. They even turned the ball over 14 times to Orlando's 8. And Banchero just had himself a monster game with 31 points and 14 rebounds, even contributed 5 assists into that too. So big night from him. And this series gets a lot more interesting now. I mean, it gets very interesting from here on out because especially right now on Bovada, we see that Orlando and the Cavs are getting close to the same type of 50-50 type of odds that the Sixers and Knicks are getting to. Orlando's at plus 290, Cleveland's at minus 380. It's really, I'm not going to say it's a crapshoot because it's not like exactly 50-50 or anything. And the Cavs still have the bigger star power. And usually in the NBA, if you have the bigger star power, then you usually go on to win the series or whatever it may be. But I don't know, man. I originally picked Orlando to win the series. I still think they do, even though they were down 2-0 and they have yet to really look even remotely good in Cleveland. But then they go home and just look amazing. And it's funny because they're only 2-point favorites in their next game, which is still in Orlando. And after you see that offensive output they put together and the defensive pressure they put together in that last game, you would think they'd be a little bit higher. But I mean, I still like them to win. And let's look at some series though that have been more surprising. So Minnesota and Phoenix. I am a very widely known Rudy Gobert hater. I think that he's very overrated. Apparently, the NBA players agree with me because on the Athletics NBA player anonymous survey, the most voted player to be overrated was Rudy Gobert himself. So I guess I have something there if most of the NBA players are agreeing with me on it. But either way, Minnesota has looked very good. Anthony Edwards is that dude. Jaden McDaniels has played extremely well. And it's funny because everyone was ripping Anthony Edwards, talking about how, like, oh, they have Jaden McDaniels to cover guys like Kevin Durant, so they'll be good. Everyone's like, it's Jaden McDaniels. Come on. Against Kevin Durant, one of the greatest to ever play the game. And to be honest, Jaden McDaniels is holding his own. He had a very good game too. He's currently second on the team in points per game with 17. He has 7 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 1 block a game, shooting 54% from the floor, and even chipping in 33% from 3. The man has impacted the game every time he's in it. And it's crazy to see because, like, 2 of your best players in this series are 22 and 23 years old. Not to mention the fact that Naz Reid, who just won 6th Man of the Year, is only 24. Karl Anthony Towns, we don't know exactly what's going on, like, in terms of his future. I mean, I doubt they really deal him, but, like, he also has yet to really turn up in this series, but he's only 28. Rudy Gobert is going to be there for a long time because after trading all those picks for him, there's no way they're getting rid of him anytime soon. But Rudy Gobert's been all right. He's averaging a double-double right now. Haven't seen as many blocks from him as really everyone would expect, but his defensive rating, look, I've been talking about a lot of bad defensive ratings in this series. Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns, and Alexander Walker are all under 100 in their defensive ratings. They're at 96, 99, 97, 97, respectively. That's nowhere close to any of the other teams defensive wise in the playoffs. I mean, you just go to the other side and you look at, let's just look at Durant, Booker, Beal, Nurkic. You're at 119, 123, 123, 115. All pretty terrible, especially in comparison to what the Timberwolves are doing. And I just enjoy watching these guys play and enjoy seeing them really kind of whoop up on the Suns, because here we are again with another Kevin Durant super team that is underperforming. If Kevin Durant gets swept in the first round, I think this affects his legacy big time, because you go from supposedly one of the best to ever play the game to now all of a sudden going from super team to super team and not even getting past the first or second round. That's just unheard of. And it just goes to show that both Kevin Durant and the Warriors needed each other for those 2 rings, because without each other, neither one of them is getting those. And we could be questioning a lot of legacies at that point. But that being said, the other one I wanted to touch on, so the Nuggets won again in the first game back in LA. So they're up 3-0. I mean, I see that being a sweep. I don't really see that ending any other way. And right now, according to Bovada, they believe the same thing. I think I brought it up before, but minus 20,000 odds for Denver to win the series. And not just that, but in the next game, still in LA, Denver's the favorite, the 3.5 point favorites, which granted isn't that high of, a single game favorite. However, it's neither here nor there. I mean, I think that's a sweep all the way. The 2 series that I'm especially interested to watch their game 3 on Friday here, the Bucks and Pacers and the Clippers and Mavs. I believe those are all on Friday. I could be wrong about that, actually. The games have been kind of flip-flopping so many different days that I don't even know when they start. Okay, so yeah, Bucks Pacers 5:30 p.m. on Friday, 8 p.m. Clippers Mavs. Those 2 I'm very interested to see. It was funny to me that with the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard finally comes back and then the Mavs win that game. That was interesting to me. And now the Mavs go back home. They steal a game on the road. I can very plainly see them winning both at home and going back to LA up 3-1. I had the Mavs winning this series in the first place. I just don't trust James Harden. I don't trust the Clippers in general. I wouldn't be surprised if someone else on the Clippers gets hurt and they have to miss the next game or 2 games or rest of the series, whatever it may be. So wouldn't be surprised there either. James Harden surprised me in game 1. He had a solid game, but then, I mean, game 2 is kind of where, we saw Luka do his thing. And then the Bucks Pacers, the Bucks are in trouble because Lillard is literally doing it all. And the rest of the team is chipping in here and there, but it's not enough to beat a Pacers team if they're finding a rhythm, which right now Pascal is averaging more per game so far than Damian Lillard. And Lillard was the one that took over game 1 and won that for the Bucks and won it pretty handily. He's averaging 34.5 in their 2 games. Siakam's at 36.5. Then you haven't even had Tyrese Halliburton really turn up the scoring much on his end. He's throwing out there 10 assists a game and 5.5 rebounds, but only putting up 10.5 points a game. So we could still see Halliburton catch his rhythm and really turn it on. And if that's the case, and you got Siakam going, you got Turner getting 19.5 points a game, you got Nembhard getting 13 a game, and then Halliburton turns that on too, that's just curtains for Milwaukee. And I'm interested to see that. I like the Pacers a lot. They're a younger team, and they have a lot of experience to gain from this playoff run in general. But this series in general is interesting. We still don't know when Giannis is coming back. He's doubtful for game 3. So he might not even be back for game 4. He might just wait till they go back to Milwaukee and get him back for game 5, if that is even possible. And to round things out on Bovada here, we have the Pelicans at plus 1,000 underdogs to win their series. There's not much to write home about in that series. I like the Thunder a lot. They're young, and I love watching them play. And I think they're going to win that series, if not by a sweep, then by 5. Then in 5. The Dallas and Clippers series is the only. That series and the Pacers series are the 2 that have actually closer odds than the Sixers one. Mavs are technically the favorites to win that series. They're at minus 165. Clippers are at plus 140, while the Bucks in that series are not the favorites. They're at plus 125, while the Pacers are at minus 145. So there you have it. There is your update this week on the NBA playoffs so far. The crazy series that is Sixers Knicks, the Celtics dropping a game to the Miami Heat at home. This playoff in general has been very fun and very interesting to watch, and I'm excited to see how it plays out. So we will be back with you guys next week. Hopefully we have all of our hosts back as well, and we might be getting our boy Fonz, our local New York Knicks fan, to come on the show and kick it with us to talk some Knicks, Sixers, and NBA playoffs in general. So thank you guys for listening to another week of the Atlantic Files, the #1 podcast on the #1 division in the NBA, brought to you by the Underdog Sports Podcast Network. And I will catch you guys next.